Here there, Chris Sutherland, aka the Alcoholic Admiral, joining you from the Admiral's Nook. Today, talking about treatment and recovery. Episode 7. I assessed really there were 3 phases in my recovery from addiction. The first was the treatment center, which included detox. After I finished treatment, there was aftercare with the military and through the treatment center. And then there was participation in a 12-step program, and that continues to this day. I entered the Edgewood Treatment Center in Nanaimo, British Columbia, March 17th of 2007, so just over 18 years ago now. I was scared witless prior to that time, full of fear, shame, and guilt. I define shame as negative feelings, emotions about who I was at the time. Basically an addict and a failed naval officer. I associate guilt with negative feelings and emotions for the things I have done, the lying, the manipulation, the harming of those closest to me, families, friends, and colleagues. I tried doing detox at home and that failed miserably. I also tried at a kind of an emergency in the hospital and I could not do it. I left immediately. I mean, that was a really scary place. So I was very lucky that the treatment center provided supervised detox when I got there. I even tried to delay the arrival at the treatment center because I wanted to go on one final bender before I stopped drinking. I was so afraid of stopping drinking. I was so afraid of having to deal with life on life's terms, of feeling feelings without being able to numb to the world. Edgewood was a humbling experience. I went from second in command of a major warship to now living with a roommate, having cleaning and kitchen duties. But I assessed this was all to provide structure in a life that had been chaotic to assist in my recovery. I learned at the treatment center that addiction does not discriminate. I was there with other military members, with doctors, lawyers, journalists, nurses, retirees, university students, so young and old, public servants, police officers, veterans of Afghanistan who had dealt with more than addiction. They were self-medicating for PTSD and other things. I must confess, though, it was almost entirely Caucasian, which speaks to the lack of social support to cover the costs of treatment centers for a large number of people across the world. I remember, though, one young woman in particular. She had perfect teeth, and I couldn't figure it out. And I later learned why. Basically, she had been drugged up. Her mom gave her first shot of heroin. I think she became involved in prostitution. And at some point, her pimp had curb stomped her, basically shattered her teeth against a curb, kicking her head in the curb. And that's why she had false, perfect, kind of veneers. The treatment center provided a safe space, a community of support to focus on getting and staying sober. Until I got to Edgewood, I suffered from what I term as terminal uniqueness, a feeling that no one could possibly understand what I was going through. Once I got there, it was holy smokes. A lot of people know what I'm going through. They're going through something similar. And that really helped me not feel alone and so isolated. We had daily routine of large group sessions, smaller group therapy sessions, and individual sessions. We had group walks, obviously meal times. The recovery program was based on a 12-step program. I'm not sure if it still is. We had people addicted to alcohol, drugs, sex, gambling, porn, food, and more. Any kind of mood-altering activities that could be taken to unhealthy and destructive extremes were there. And you layer on things for veterans of Afghanistan and police officers and first responders on top of that, trying to deal with the PTSD they are dealing with. It was early days and it was very challenging for them. I think it's gotten much better since that time, dealing with not just addiction, but the other things that people are dealing with on top of that. Because, normally, my assessment is a lot of people self-medicate for the stuff they're dealing with in life. After hours, we socialized and worked on our assigned homework. which forced interaction with our peers. And I think really this was the most critical part of the treatment for me, because as my addiction progressed, I became increasingly isolated from those I cared about, from colleagues, from friends, from family. As I explained earlier, in reconnecting in a healthy, positive way with other human beings, what was critical, I learned how to engage in intimate, honest communications with other human beings. I learned how to be honest and vulnerable, to take the masks off that I hid behind my whole life, to truly try and be my authentic self. It was incredibly hard and scary to do this, but in that environment with little no judgment and with a lot of practice, I found it got easier and it really helped me. A lot of people were dealing with a lot of trauma, but we learned not to be self-critical if we had not experienced a great deal of trauma in our life. And as I shared, I have not, I don't think. But we needed to honor, what those people had been through and respect that. Two other critical pieces of my recovery. One was the great advice that I received early when I got in the treatment center, which is I should stick with the winners, which means sticking with those who are serious about their recovery and not using the treatment center as a place to engage in unhealthy behaviors. It's kind of natural when I think someone gets into a scary, uncertain environment like that to seek out, someone of the opposite sex, someone they're attracted to, but that puts recovery at risk. And luckily the counselors were there watching out for that. So sticking with the winners in recovery, those who were serious about their recovery, was critical. The second was that the counselors who were there were mostly recovered addicts themselves. They were really good at calling us out on our bullshit. They wouldn't allow us to manipulate, to lie, because we were really good at it. It helped me to accept my role in my addiction. No one had tied me down and forced liquor down my throat. I had done that to myself. I had to accept responsibility for where I was and how I got there and the harm that I caused along the way. After 55 days in the treatment center, I left scared shitless again, but with some tools in the toolbox and contacts to assist me, to face the real world again. It was amazing. I swear to God that my drink of choice, the liquor of choice, had taken this national ad campaign. The airports where I went were just filled with these ads. But, I made it home safely. And back home, back in the military environment, I participate in aftercare 1 day a week with both the military and also with the treatment center. They provided virtual sessions, webcams. Technology was kind of new there, but with a counselor, we would get together with the people I had gone through treatment with to help us stay in recovery. And, the anchor, I guess, in my recovery has been continued participation in a 12-step program. There's a lot of criticism and discussion, and I'm not going to get into that here, but I view the 12-step program that I participate in more from a spiritual nature. It helped me deal with the wreckage of my past, the harm that I caused, why I drank. It helped me put my personal and professional life back in order. And it helped me, deal with the past so I could move forward in a positive direction. I tried attending, I must confess, a 12-step program about 5 years before I got sober, and it really freaked me out because I thought it was too religious and filled with hand-holding Jesus freaks. Reflecting now, I just didn't want to get sober. I was too afraid of not being able to continue drinking, so I didn't even really give it a try. In early days, I found that I was more of a dry drunk early in my recovery. And by that, I mean, I was still sober physically. I had put the plug in the jug, but I wasn't progressing in kind of my emotional and spiritual sobriety. And I figured out, that I was, going to meetings 5 minutes late. I would sit in the back. I would leave 5 minutes early. There was none of that connection, none of that participation in, what I think these places help do, which is, again, create that healthy connection with other human beings so you don't feel terminally alone and isolated. I think that's a big part of it. I also engaged in volunteering. I helped with the addiction helpline, getting people in contact with experts in addiction. And I volunteered for a number of other things because I learned in order to stay sober, I had to give it away. I had to become involved and support others in trying to get sober. In recovery, I regained so much. My family, my friends, I regained the trust of those around me. I was able to pick up and move forward with my career in the Navy. That you recall how I was so terrified that it was over, and I'm so much happier in recovery, so much happier in sobriety. I know a slip up is just a drink away, My addiction is cunning, baffling, it's powerful, it's out there in the parking lot doing push-ups, waiting for me. So I've got to keep, I think, working on, doing good things, staying in a good frame of mind, staying connected in a healthy way with other human beings. I know a lot of people can't afford treatment, but there are a number of programs out there that are free. There are 12-step programs for atheists if religious stuff freaks you out, and as it does for so many people. For those in small towns, one of the few good things to come out of the pandemic is that 12 recovery meetings are virtual all over the world. 24/7 you can access a meeting somewhere and just listen and talk if you want and participate. And those meetings, that connection has helped me remain in recovery for over 18 years now, and I'm so grateful for that. If you are struggling with addiction as I did, I really hope you'll reach out for help, and I hope you have access to some of the help that I was so fortunate to get. I hope that non-judgmental hand of help will be there for you. And I'll talk a bit more on, kind of, I think, this other steps to recovery, not just for addiction, but also for my mental illness, my depression in a later episode. Thanks very much for letting me share. I really appreciate it. And I hope if this helps but one person, then it's worth it. And more to follow in subsequent episodes, where I think the focus is now going to turn to talking about my depression and kind of the 3 major depressive episodes that I faced in my past. So thanks again. Make good choices, be kind, and stay hydrated. Until then, the Alcoholic Admiral, Chris Sutherland, signing off. Thanks very much. Cheers. 80s video recommendation for episode 7, which was a long one, so I'll make the recommendation short. 3 words: flock of seagulls. The video, wishing. The reason, hair. But also, they appear to be in space, and they're wearing these ski goggles, which apparently are, in the 80s, was space age eyewear. But absolutely, the hair is just outstanding. I saw them in concert recently, and unfortunately that hair is gone, but I encourage you to watch that video. The link is down below here. Enjoy. And until next time, Chris Sutherland, Alcoholic Admiral, signing off. Thanks very much.